hopefully everybody remote can hear. So really just wanted to talk a little bit about how we got to be where we are today and what we're looking at for the fleet and what some of the ideas are. And then Rachel's going to follow that up with some dive into details about implementation and organization, how that works. And then there'll be, following that, will be a chat about a test case on the Endeavor that happened in August and how that worked and it's still on and active. So that's sort of the rough outline. So this is really a collaboration by multiple organizations. SatNag started talking about what we're going to do for the next generation firewall years ago, and kept moving slightly further down the road, and it's been a slow process. We got the okay to get some funding and put a proposal in a year and a half ago or so on relatively short order, and relatively an effort by a number of people, principally on SatNag and CSNet, to get that going. And we got approval to get Fortinet devices for all the vessels. So that happened really quickly, and then Rachel's been putting a plan together to organize how those go. I should probably back up a little bit and say that, you know, before this we had the PEP links and the cyber roams for a long time, and then the cyber roams hit end of life and migrated to Sophos XG, which was supposed to be a configuration compatible device. Wasn't quite, but kind of close. But we're still stuck in our current implementation on many of the vessels with these two separate devices. One that's picking what connection is active, and the other to deal with rules of who can talk out and how. And several years ago, we had much less bandwidth than we do now. So there was much more emphasis on how we limit people, so that the connection doesn't get completely clogged. At this point, we have a whole lot more bandwidth than we did before, which is awesome, and even more as the Star Shield is coming online, more or less. But it's been great, and on the Navy vessels, we have a 20 by 20 at the moment, which has really been a game changer for a lot of vessels. So as we're moving into this new world with a lot more bandwidth, that does a couple of things. That alleviates some of the limits on what we needed to do per person and per device, but it also increases some of the threat vectors of people potentially being able to come in and try things. And hack in, that kind of thing. We've also got a much more connected world than we did before. So we really need a new device that has much more fine-grained. We should go to the next slide. Should have said that a while ago, sorry. So we really need something that is much more seamless, that has much more finer granularity, that can give us QoS, things like that. Those are some of the goals, really. Because the fleet is managed independently, this is an opt-in service. So we've been designing and creating with the whole fleet in mind, and hoping everybody's going to be interested in adopting this. The first institutions up for trying this are a lot of our home institutions of the people who've been involved in this. So we'll be the guinea pigs. And as I mentioned before, Endeavor has been using it for the last several months pretty successfully. Schooliac has a similar but slightly different implementation at the moment, but has some experience with what these devices can do and how they can operate. And so far, feedback's been positive. So we'll hear more about what happened and more about the details, what the implementations look like a little bit later. So let's say yeah, what else? That's about it. So next slide. So one of the big things we're implementing is having a hub. So these devices will tunnel back to a hub. We've got two in mind right now. One will be based at URI, one will be based at Scripps. So an East Coast and a West Coast. Any of the devices on any of the ships can connect to either of those to get out. That guarantees that we have US-based IP addresses for all our connections, which can be important. It also, the way these devices work, these are essentially seamless tunnels, so it doesn't matter which connection is active. Connections won't get dropped if you're switching from VSAT to Star, for example. Those connections will be maintained, which is not true with unless you've got a tunnel that UAF has been relatively successful in having a tunnel, but I think they're the only ones at this point. No, okay. Scripps also you do. You guys do the tunnel too? Okay, great. So 2 institutions are doing tunnels, and everybody else is just having connections stuck on whatever connection mode was the first point of implementation. And that's been working okay, but you know, it'll be much better. This is also going to make life a lot easier for gaining remote access into the ships. Also makes life a lot easier for tunneling back to your home institutions. So the ship can look like it's on campus, which is great. Makes life much easier for getting access to internal IPs and things like that. We at UW for a while, we had an internal service for things like timesheets that made it challenging. Since it's gone over Workday, which is all another story. But it does allow for those kind of things to happen, which is really great. And this also provides standard access for OmniSoc. So OmniSoc will be able to provide active monitoring of traffic and be able to alert us proactively if they're seeing traffic that is cause for concern. And so, you know, on our vessels, we don't really have to do anything. It just is a part of the service that they're providing for us, and is all handled through these devices, which is great. So we can hopefully get a jump on any bad actors, any infected systems, that kind of thing, that are trying to cause troubles. Yeah, why are we doing this? So cybersecurity is one of the big reasons. Mentioned several of these things already, but really being able to more finely tune how traffic is flowing and what's allowed, what's not allowed, how priorities are happening, and how we can increase monitoring, improve monitoring is, those are key. Those are key. There's also for a number of, for the vessels that are inspected, this is becoming a requirement. And being able to say at inspection time, yes, we have these tools in place, we have active monitoring in place, uh, is not going to be optional as we move forward. So, so those are all great things. This, and I mentioned the seamless internet across multiple channels. We've Thomas was talking about the different satellite, primary and a backup, those kind of things. But with this, we also want to factor in things like cell modems when the vessel's close to shore, or short connections if the vessel's in port. So all of those things can be seamlessly swapped between, depending on where the vessel is, what's going on. So that will make life a whole lot simpler on the next. So we looked at several different alternatives. Long story short, we chose the Fortinet solution. It's really down to a couple of different ones, but Fortinet seems to provide a wide range of offerings that can be integrated very well, and there are a few vessels that have had positive experience already using these devices. So we know that there is previous experience with using these with over satellite connections with long delay times, things like that. Really that simple. Next slide, please. So a little outline of what the plan is. So we've got some larger ones, the 201Fs for the larger vessels, the globals and the intermediates, and 101Fs for the coastal vessels. That's been in the plan. Plan calls for 2 for each vessel. So we've got high availability. There's failover. It can automatically be configured, and again, Rachel will go into more detail on some of this, but they are configured, can be configured to talk to both hubs, swap between either one, depending on where you are and what you want to do. Also, I want to say there was something I forgot to say. Right, mention each will have the US IP address. I mentioned that before, and it'll be able to seamlessly switch between whatever connections, all tunneling back to that hub, and then tunneling back to the institution if you wish. The big, well, so there's been a lot of testing already taking place on Endeavor. There'll be some fine tuning going on as we implement on other vessels and take place. The main takeaway here is that commissioning should not be a root. This should not be painless. This should be as simple as possible. The bottom line really is that for this to be successful, this needs to be simpler on a day-to-day basis for people on the vessel. That's
your go-to code. I mean, your basic code.
Well,
how many people did get that?
Hopefully a few in this room. Glad you do. Right, so test, refine, keep training. It's a beautiful thing. Yeah, so that's really it. This should be easy. And the experience on the Endeavor, which again will be in more detail coming up, is that this was a lot easier than EK80 install. And I've just got a couple of screenshots of various types of data that you can get out. I didn't want to go into too much detail, but this looks somewhat familiar for PepLink users. So this is just showing data usage, but also combined is data quality on the different channels. There is a way to do that in PepLink in the diagnostics, but it's a fixed period of time. That's pretty short. This particular one was the last 24 hours, but you can specify something else. You can go to the next slide. You can also, sorry, that's okay. You can also go back to week or month. And again, it has the quality on that, which is actually kind of handy. So you can see the VSAT was out for a little period of time during that last week. But I think this will be really helpful for doing some troubleshooting. Next. We've also got looking at connection health to the shore hubs. So this is showing things like jitter and what our quality of connection looks like. Next. What's jitter? Oh, what's jitter? Jitter is looking at basically how smooth the data stream is getting across. So also dropouts and things. This is a report that will look somewhat similar to Sophos users, but this is a daily report that can be generated and they can be customized. So showing some of the higher usage activities for the main applications, the main users, that kind of thing for a day. But again, all that can be customized, which is great. Sure, go ahead next. But you can also dive into traffic. So looking at what was using the most data in a given period of time. You can look by users, you can look by applications, you can dive into what's going on. So if someone needs to go and if something's acting up or something's looking a little wonky, you can go in and dial in pretty quickly. Who's the likely candidate here? What's the likely activity that's happening? Next one. And you can look at traffic from a specific host. So here are all the connections that are coming out from a specific host on the ship. You can also highlight on one and look at details. So this one, if I remember correctly, this is Windows Update, but if you notice, it's actually getting its updates from an Australian server. No idea why that's the case, but and it probably doesn't really matter in this case. But if something's acting funny, you can dial in and get this kind of information. What else? Let's go to the next one. You can also look for specific applications, right? So here are all the connections that are active for Zoom at that particular. So again, just have a lot more ability to get details than we've got with the current devices, and I think that'll be really handy if it's needed, and hopefully it'll just work and you won't need to worry about any of this stuff at all. We'll just be sitting in the background. Next. Right, so process of support for implementing community feedback. We on the firewall, in the firewall working group, we want to know what are your biggest networking challenges, what are your biggest frustrations. We want to make sure that those are being addressed and handled. And happy to have a discussion about what some of those things are and what some of those things look like. What are some of the biggest day-to-day frustrations? We think we have a pretty good idea of that, but we're only a few people, and we are not on the ships as much as we used to be, and as much as some other people are today. So the more input we can get from others, then the better and more robust we can make sure that all of this is, which will make it more seamless and easier to use for everybody. We're also in the starting processes of developing some, pooling some training resources. Fortinet has some really good ones that are online already. Pulling together some wiki items and things of that nature. And we're also really interested, once things are up and running, new feature requests, what we can do to refine and make things better as we go along. This is an ongoing, this is not a one and done. This is a, this will need to be tweaked and refined, and it's going to change as we get more bandwidth coming up in the future, and as we get some of those more of those low Earth and medium Earth connections going, things like that. You know, the landscape's going to be changing, so we're going to try and make sure that we're capturing those changes and addressing things. For installation and technical support, we've again, I think Rachel's going to jump in on some of this stuff, but working on some templates for installations so that things can be done in a relatively uniform fashion, vessel to vessel. A lot of it can be done, a lot of the basic overall structure can be done from the hubs, and the ability to refine firewall rules and things can certainly be done on the ships. But we're putting those together more and more. Next.